What's up, War Room? Welcome back. A very special big board episode recording the same day Connor's inaugural top 65 big board dropped. It's all we're talking about tonight to get smarter on what went into these rankings. All draft NCR's rocking the hat, which goes for sale March 1st at badlandstoj.com. Yes, we have another URL, which is not for additional tiers. I got some questions on Twitter about that. It's just to sell hats and drop a little like surprises here or there. So it's all good stuff. CR, another version of the big board is done. You and Dan are at it again. Glad we got you in the studio before you hit the road for spring training and the combine with Will and Dan.
Yeah, back to back.
Other things. So how we doing?
I'm good, man. I love dropping the big board for Badlands. Dan just makes it so much easier year after year, where now the process for me is watch the players, rank the players, which I've been doing with this class literally since June. And the system he's built, it's just very easy to slide guys up and down. I think it looks really good. Everybody that's just learning about this class, it's such an easy crash course. You can know, you're going to have that thing will have 300 players on it again, like it did last year. We'll see how far I can get. I'm always nervous to go above 300 because I don't go above 300 for NBC because that's just how we format it with Badlands. It's my board. I can make it 600 if I want to.
You got to go high enough to get Zaire Barnes player.
Right. It's funny. The things that scar me with the Jets, it's crazy because every year, I remember a couple years ago, Greg and I were doing the guide, just me and him, and I made it literally from scratch. And, we had, I think the last pick the Jets made in that year was 2000. It was the year Zach Wilson was drafted. So we had Michael Carter in the guide, and we felt really good about that. And then the year is every year to kind of eliminate the chance that a player they take will not be in the guide. And the reality is it's just going to happen. You're just going to, have somebody outside the 300. The Jets, though, it's remarkable. Like, I'm trying to think. I think Barnes, I don't even remember if I watched Barnes before the draft. And I do this not pretty close to full time. I do a lot of fantasy, obviously, for NBC during the season, but June, July, August, and January and on, this is number one. Priority number one is the draft. So it's the goal is to avoid to missing the Jets, whoever they take on day 3. Let's see if we can avoid that.
Yeah, Barnes is in the Dylan Donahue camp. Hopefully he proves otherwise. But for now, we're using it as a reference. Now,
another guy I did not watch and I remember when they took him,
short arms.
Nobody had watched him. Yeah. So.
Oh, man. All right. So I look at this big board, and as someone who knows, a bit about the draft because we do a podcast together, but I don't know the ins and outs. The first thing that catches my eye is I immediately get very angry that the Jets won the Washington game because the first two players are Marvin Harrison Jr. and Joe Alt, two guys they absolutely would have had a path to getting, at least for Alt, if they had lost that game. A game that was not a win that we felt good about. So your top two players, Harrison and Alt. Then I scroll down to, all right, we're picking 10. Who have we talked a lot about? I see Fashanu at 7. I see Fuaga at 13. But then I see Fontenot at 12, which I think a lot of our guys were surprised by because we've talked a lot about Fuaga. Talk about these top 4 tackles and how they come together and how they stack up and how these, after doing these rankings, how you're thinking about who the Jets are going to pick at 10. I think the latest Jeremiah mock draft today had the Jets still taking Fuaga. We had Brandon Thorne on this feed who had some pretty strong opinions in the opposite direction about Fuaga. Olu, even for myself, is kind of becoming like a consensus comfortable mock draft pick for the Jets. But then you also have Fontenot there at 12 and all at 2. When even some people say he could be there, it's making my head hurt. Makes sense of the tackles for me in the top 13 here.
So Fontenot is definitely the trickiest one, and I'll update the system so it lists him as OL instead of OT because he played tackle in college, but he is every bit on that AVT trajectory where whether it's the measurables or, probably going to be the measurables and how he's built, there will be a lot of teams, majority of the teams will project him to play guard at the next level. I think he can play tackle. I think it's the same argument we had with AVT where he's going to be one hell of a guard, but I think he could play tackle. So I will update that where he's listed more OL. And of course, a guy like Fuaga that he's just a right tackle, right? Like that's what he is. That might hold a little bit more value to teams. So I get that. And depending what the Jets do after free agency, and something I will try to do this year, it's very hard because it's a unique exercise that would take a lot of time, but I'm still going to try to do it, is I'll have this big board, which is a general big board. I will try to make a Jets-centric big board this year because I think that would, let me put it like this. If I was making the Jets-centric big board, I think I'd have Fuaga over Fontenot because of the need for tackle. But hypothetically, what if the Jets go into free agency, and this is a big hypothetical, and they get Tyron Smith, and we listen to the post-free agency press conference, and Joe Douglas or Robert Saleh, whoever, is like, hey, we're going to play AVT full-time at right tackle. Well, then I would love Fontenot at the 10th overall pick, which people probably think is insane. I'm very high on the player because then he could play guard and maybe he long-term kicks out to tackle. So I think that situation. Now, let me go back to the top, right? Yeah. Alt's my number 2 player in the draft. Ahead of Caleb Williams, which might surprise some people, but I think Alt is almost every bit as good as Penei Sewell, who I had number 2 in his draft. I just think he's special. And then you get to Fashanu at 7. I'm starting to wonder, I get this weird vibe the other day. I'm like, is Fashanu going to Melvin Ingram us? Like, we talk about this guy for 3 months, and then we can't believe he fell to the Jets, and they take Quentin Coples.
And they pass. I'm definitely getting some of that, like,
right?
Early PTSD feel with him.
Right. So I'll talk about the player, though. Fashanu, 7th overall. He's got great feet. He's got really long arms. He's such a smart guy. He glides in pass protection. I think he's gotten stronger year after year. He really just doesn't land and sustain on his blocks in the run game as much as you would like for a top 10 pick. But he's such a good athlete at his age and inexperience of just playing that you should be projecting him to get a lot better in the run game. I don't know about a lot better, but I really think he could be an average run blocking tackle in the NFL while being a legitimate top 5 pass protecting tackle in the NFL, which that's really what Brick was for a long time. We don't talk about it with Brick. Brick was an okay run blocker. I never looked at Brick and was like, oh, he's just erasing people in front of him all the time. But Brick kept his quarterback upright all the time. So Brick was regarded as a very, very good tackle, a great New York Jet. And I think Fashanu's mental makeup is what really sells me on him as not only tackle 2, but in the top 10. He's just very well calculated. His teammates just rave about him. I can't wait to talk to him at the Combine one-on-one. I'm assuming I will. I'm going to stay for the whole event. And NBC was really good to me last year. I got a lot of one-on-one time with so many of these guys. Fontenot at 12, I think, is a very fair play. Fuaga at 13. I already went over Fontenot. Fuaga at 13 is a very fair place to put him. Tackle 3, he's O-line 4 in this scenario. I think with Fuaga, I wrote it in the blurb on the board on Badlands. I think he's the best run blocker in the draft, and you can't rush through him with speed to power. I just worry about him not carrying his feet in pass pro, and what I mean by that is, I had the same question with J.C. Latham, a tackle in this class. When guys get that long runway and they cross the tackle's face with an inside move, he doesn't bring his feet with him as fast as a lot of the top guys. And when you look at Alt, he's so big, but he moves really well for his size. He's so big for his size that even when it's not as quick as Fashanu, he just has so much length and he just finds a way. So I like Fuaga a lot. I don't think he's a perfect right tackle prospect. I think he's an absolute bruiser in the run game, though. So yeah, that's a really good group. And I think the good thing is if you're a Jets fan, you're sitting there, maybe some vibes, not even the vibes of 2020, right? Where we're like, will a tackle make it? Like, are they going to be gone? I think somebody's going to make it to the Jets, and I really like all 4 of these players a lot, quite clearly.
So we're going to flip over to some of the skill position stuff now, but I'm just going to shout out that Mims is down at 21, Guyton at 26, and Latham at 31, just 3 other tackles that we periodically get questions on. Now, my eyes also, even though the Jets are not going to take a quarterback this year, I know New England is picking 3rd, and we got to deal with New England every year. Are they going to draft a quarterback? So you got Caleb Williams at 3, you got Drake May at 6, but then I scrolled down to Penix at 19 and Jaden Daniels at 20. Lot of recent McCarthy buzz. You have him down in the 30s at 37. How do you see the quarterback shaking out in this draft in the top 10? And how is that going to impact both the teams who will be drafting around the Jets and then the teams that the Jets will be sharing a division with going forward?
So Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels are locks to go in the top